And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
Yo, Lord Willin, Jeff Canarsie, Mob Talk Radio. Check it out. Yo, we stay quiet like Russell Buffalino when things will get ugly like Pepsi's death in Casino. Who do we know? No one, nobody. But we're all well respected like Della Croce and Gotti. I know wild nights, Havana not turned. Light up a cigar and watch your spot burn. You'll get patty whacked, I'm tough like Irish dock workers. Rubber guys with guys, hooligans and block lurkers. Corner berserkers, street savvy soldiers. You owe, you better pay. Don't make me say I told you. Code you don't betray, I say what I mean. Providence and Brooklyn all the way to the bean. I'd rather be unseen, like Vinny the Chin. I don't gotta go to Vegas to see cities of sin. Pull the pin, drop bombs like Danny Green. I write homicide like the murder machine. Lansky Luciano, mastermind the racket. Up in the clam house with $1 million in my jacket. Move around when the streets get darker. Pay homage to real bosses like Gambino and Patriarcha. Mob talking, but you don't talk to the mob. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, we stay on our job.
On a given week, I'm out of town a lot. Whether it's Philadelphia, it's New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, wherever the case may be, I'm always looking for a place where I can sit down and have a great dinner. Ambiance is key, price is obviously key, but the most important thing is the food good? And there's a place I want to tell you about today. It's called Saltwater at Margate. If you are going down to the shore, because I know a lot of people in Philadelphia go to the shore, especially Margate, you're missing out on a great restaurant if you haven't been there. The name is Saltwater Margate. It's at 9401 Ventnor Avenue, Margate City, New Jersey. The phone number there is 609-289-8078. You can also visit them online at saltwatermargate.com. This place is unbelievable. Not only is the food absolutely superb, the price is great too. They're renowned for their pizza and their gnocchi. They have all kinds of different things from mussels to roast pork and Italian fare. So do yourself a favor, do me a favor, go and visit Saltwater Margate. You will not be disappointed. It is a place that I think at some point, if not already, there's going to be lines out the door and around the block. So if you're down on the shore, stop in, go to Saltwater Margate. At least check them out online at saltwatermargate.com. And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Canarsie, and we've got a big one this week. Yes, I know we talked about the JFK thing, but I think we're going to push that back to next week. Lately, we've been getting a lot of questions, and I haven't been able to really sort of answer them the way that I wanted to. So we're going to try to get to a ton of questions this week, and then next week we'll turn around and do the JFK thing. So a couple things we need to talk about before we dive right in. The first thing is I wanted to talk about the Flannagans. If you don't know what the Flannagans is, it's a TV show that will be coming out probably, I would think, in 2019 before it changes over to 2020. If you go to Facebook, type in The Flannagans, and it should come up, or The Flannagans TV show. We have a Facebook page. Everything is moving very, very quickly along with that. We do have some casting news that will be coming out soon, and we will be auditioning for certain roles and stuff like that. But there's a million things going on with that. But to get information about that, you can check us out on Twitter at RealMobTalk7, or you can go over to Facebook and type in The Flannagans or The Flannagans TV show. It'll pop right up, and you can get all your questions answered there as far as auditions and etc. We're looking forward to it. I believe production is going to start in late September, almost October. We're looking forward to it, and we think it's going to be a great show. So all that being said, I wanted to kind of jump into the questions because there is a ton of them. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to cover some hate mail and some other things. But let's get to the questions. All right. In The Sopranos Season 2, I never really thought Richie Aprile was a villain. What were your thoughts on the Richie Aprile character? Did Tony Soprano give Richie a fair shake? Richie Aprile wasn't meant to be liked. He was a character that sort of got out of prison and was just sort of a Neanderthal type of character. But at the end of the day, he definitely was a villain. And I think the fact that he wouldn't listen to Tony and kind of was banging Janice didn't help the situation whatsoever. Did he get a fair shake? I think so. I think the bigger question is, did Feech LaManna get a fair shake? They sort of set Feach Lamana up to take a pinch for the rest of his life, which is kind of a rat move when you think about it. But I think Richie April definitely got a better fair shake than some of the other characters that were in the show. All right. Can you talk a little bit about why Billy Batts handed over his rackets to Jimmy Burke and not some of his own members in the family? Say John Gotti or someone else at the Gambinos. What was the main reason? I think a lot of it had to do with Jimmy Burke just absorbed it. These things happen a lot. Guys go to prison, and other guys just sort of absorb their rackets, and I think that probably the likelihood was the Gambinos allowed him to do it because he could turn a profit. We talk about this show all the time, is that you got to be able to do two things. You got to be able to kill, you got to be able to earn. If you can do both, you're highly valuable to them, which is why Jimmy Burke was allowed to do a lot of the things that he did. He had a lot of power and strength because of his earning capabilities, and that has more to do with it than pretty much everything. And as we know, Billy Batts, when he got out, wanted him back. Jimmy basically told him go fuck himself. He went and talked to other people. Jimmy got pissed and killed him. And why nobody ever went after Jimmy Burke for that was very simple. His earning capacity outweighed the necessity to kill him, and that's just pretty much how it went. All right, I've heard different things on this, but was Joey Testa ever made when he went to the Lucchese family and worked under Gas Pipe Casso? No, never made, and neither was Anthony Center. They made the switch, obviously because Roy DeMeo got whacked, but no, they were never made guys. They were associates, and that was the extent of that. All right, it seems like all the murders Gotti was charged with and conspiring to commit, Robert DiBernardo was the one he most regretted green lighting. Seems like they may have been quite close. Do you think this is the case? I think John Gotti regretted listening to Sammy the Bull Gravano. I can tell you that much. Because DB getting whacked had more to do with Gravano and his lies to Gotti than it actually had to do with DiBernardo himself. Sammy Gravano had a history of making up things about other crime family members and about associates to line his pockets. That's what he did. And a good example is that he took over a lot of guys' rackets that he had clipped. He goes to John. He says, this guy's talking subversive. He's not showing up when I ask him to. And Gotti's rule was you're called to the table, you show up. If you don't, you're going to get killed. So I think really, if anything, Gotti regretted believing anything Sammy Gravano had to say, because he did this repeatedly. It wasn't just a one-time shot. He did this numerous times to line his pocket, take over their companies and stuff like that. So that's more of a reality than, say, having him have a regret of whacking a guy. He whacks a guy on somebody else's word, and that was the mistake. All right. And the Operation Donnie Brasco, if the Operation Donnie Brasco never happened, do you think Sonny Black could have been a boss of the family someday? And if so, would he have been good as a boss, good or bad? I don't think so. I don't think ultimately, at the end of the day, he ever would have taken over as boss. I mean, we obviously see what Rusty Rostelli and Joey Massino were capable of in the end, especially when they used Vito Rizzuto to take out the captains in Brooklyn, that whole murder sequence. But I don't think so. I think it's hard to play the odds of that, considering what actually did happen. But no, I would he have been a good boss? Sure. But the odds of him actually taking over, I think, were very minuscule. All right, Jeff, did Jimmy Burke need permission from Paul Vario to whack all the guys after the Lufthansa heist, and why? No, he didn't need permission. A lot of it was to sort of subterfuge anybody talking. That's why he killed him. It had nothing to do with the way Goodfellas sort of played it out. It really just came down to the fact that Jimmy Burke didn't want himself tied to it, and he didn't want Paul Vario tied to it. And so out of necessity, that's what he did. But no, he didn't need to go to Paul Vario to do that, because the majority of the guys involved were not made guys. They were just associates, so doesn't need permission to do that. All right. Have you read Jerry Capisci's book, Mob Boss? There was an old mob guy named Don Zaza who would hang around the club, sit by the door, smoking his stinking cigar, throw matches on the floor, spit and urinate all over the toilet seat, just to see if anybody knows anything about him. I read that book years ago. I don't remember much of it. I don't remember Don Zaza, and I looked into it a little bit. Nobody seems to know who the guy is. So I wish I could answer that better, but it sounds like he was just kind of a hanger-on and a guy that hung out at the social clubs. I could be wrong, but I don't really know enough about it to answer the question. How did Rusty Rastelli become strong enough to be the boss of the Bananos? I think a lot of it is you have to be calculating. You got to be, I don't want to say weaselly, but you got to be Machiavellian in how you do it. Rastelli had strength, he had power, he had Messino helping him out. And that's basically how it happened. Sometimes the lesser of two evils is a guy that'll murder. Sometimes the lesser of two evils is a guy who won't. So I just think that he was just Machiavellian. We've seen this in every crime family, from the Bonanos to the Genoveses to the Gambinos to the Colombos. We've seen it in Philly. We've seen it everywhere. This is nothing new. But, as far as, his longevity as a boss is very short run, so we're never really going to know what ultimately could have happened as a result of that. Some people believe he never should have been in that position to begin with, but, it is what it is. All right, a JFK question. Could you outline who Jack Ruby was and what exactly he did for the outfit? I've read he was a known money collector for them. Okay. Basically, Jack Ruby owned a lot of nightclubs. He got his start when he was a kid. He was arrested a bunch of times at 10 years old for truancy, and he really gets his start selling race tip sheets when he's a kid on the street corners. That's sort of how he gets into the life, but ultimately it was the fact that Ruby ran nightclubs. He provided prostitutes for high-dollar people. He provided prostitutes for gangsters, celebrities, politicians. Not to mention he had a narcotics ring kind of going on. So he made money in a lot of different ways. And as far as the outfit goes, he was the direct contact between Giancana, Carlos Marcello, Johnny Roselli, and Lee Harvey Oswald. In fact, it was Lee Harvey Oswald. His uncle was actually a mobster, and he worked with Jack Ruby, and that's how Jack Ruby met Oswald. Then through Ruby, Oswald meets Roselli. Through Roselli, he meets Giancana, and that's kind of how the whole thing happened. That's pure fact. There's no fiction involved in that, no conspiracy theory in that. It's just the truth. Ruby was just a pimp, a pool hustler, a gambler, and so really, if you're looking for to dot the I's and cross the T's as far as other things directly related to the underworld, his thing was just he operated a lot of casinos. He was not casinos, but a lot of clubs, and he was able to push guys out of the way, and obviously Chicago took a kickback from that. So that's really where he got his start, and that's really the correlation between Jack Ruby and the outfit and the Mafia in general. All right, does any non-New York boss have a seat on the commission today? If not, which family represents another family? Chicago, Detroit, New Orleans, Cleveland, Kansas City, and so on. I know that the Genoveses historically have answered for Philadelphia, at least post Angelo Bruno. And I heard that they represent Chicago on the commission as well. I could be wrong about the Chicago part. Detroit, to my knowledge, doesn't have a seat on the commission anymore. Kansas City, Cleveland, in the past were represented by Russell Buffalino. But who represents them today specifically, I couldn't really tell you. I'm not on the seat of the commission. I don't get invited to those things. So I really couldn't be 100% accurate as far as that. As far as a non-New York boss, I'm not sure, because the days of Trafficante are over. The days of Ray Patriarca are done. The days of Russell Buffalino are done. So I'm sure it's a lot different these days. But honestly, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't be 100% on that. All right, can you give a rough idea using the number of captains and soldiers and the difference of size between the five families, as well as Philadelphia, Chicago, etc.? I think the best example is to take Philadelphia for a second, right? So you take Philly, and Philly probably, realistically, and I can't be specific, but Philly is a small area. I know they have representation in Chicago. They have representation in Rhode Island. I know they have representation in other areas. But specifically inside of Philadelphia, let's say they have 4 or 5 captains. They've probably got 10 or 15 guys under them, if that, and then they've got a couple hundred associates. But then if you look at the Genovese crime family, they probably have 20 captains with 25 guys underneath of that, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, 200 associates plus. So each size of the New York family is built like that. They have 250 members, give or take 150, 250. That doesn't account for associates, which could be in the thousands. I doubt it's that high, but that's the reality when you look at some place like Philly. Now, Chicago back in the day, was absolutely massive. I have heard their numbers are very high again, but you can never really be certain about these things. I think an average, I think Chicago probably in their heyday, 400 made guys, 500 made guys. I think that's probably relative to 100 today, if that, and then you're talking probably 15, 10, 12 capos, and then soldiers, God knows how many, and then associates can go into the thousands with any crime family. So those are the differences. All right, what sport do you think makes all the families around the country make the most money, or is it just a regional thing? I think football and boxing are really, and probably basketball to some extent. Listen, football is always going to be the biggest money maker, especially for gambling. They can't control football, but they can control boxing. They've done it for years. But I think those legitimately are the two biggest money makers for the mob, especially when you talk about gambling. So I think it's a safe bet, definitely. I don't think hockey or baseball really is as big gambling. But then again, when you got a fucking degenerate gambler, they'll bet on 2 fucking Tic Tacs circumcising a rat. You know what I mean? So, all right, Jeff, I'm half Puerto Rican and half Italian. But I have a question for you. The rumors that Chicago has ruled over Puerto Rico for a very long time. Are there still connected men like Tony Terzi? What I can tell you about Puerto Rico is that they actually have their own mafia comprised of 6 families. But they're sort of known as a cartel as well, which is why I would probably disagree that they're ruled over Chicago. They're allied with the Italian mafia, but they aren't commanded by them in any sort of fashion. In fact, the allies of all 6 families in Puerto Rico are the Nintas, the Italian Mafia, the Cali Cartel, the Guadalajara Cartel, the Latin Kings, the Russian Mafia, and Los Pepes. But their enemies are the Mau Maus, the Medellin Cartel, the Juarez Cartel, and the Dominican factions that are there. But it is worth noting these families are involved in a vast array of crimes, just like the mob: drugs, drug trafficking, racketeering, contract killings, political corruption, loan sharking, gambling, extortion, etc., kidnapping, police corruption, and more. But they also go by the surname of the Riccanese Mafia. So there is a Puerto Rican mafia, but they're more closely aligned with sort of the way a cartel faction runs. But as far as them being controlled by Chicago, absolutely fucking not. Maybe back in the day. But look, Tony Terzi was a guy that was associated with the Riccanese Mafia between the 1950s and 70s, but he's really best known for operating the La Riviera in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and he also owned a bunch of brothels and stuff like that. But to say that he really controlled anything in Puerto Rico is sort of a bit of a long stretch. Yes, was he there? Yes. Did he have connections with the mob? Absolutely. But the Riccanese Mafia has been there. They will be there. But like I said, they're closely aligned to a cartel, so I think it's hard for me to at least buy that Chicago, at least today's time period, has any control over what goes on there. But, it is what it is. All right, where can you find the best Italian food in New York City? Look, everybody's got their own taste. You got Patsy's, Regine's, Rao's, but I try to find out-of-the-way places. I like small mom-and-pop places. Manhattan's ridiculously overpriced, but I think it just really depends on what your palate is and what you like. Manhattan's got some great places. So does Queens, Howard Beach. I mean, no matter where you go in New York City, you're going to find the best food in the world. But I have a tendency to like the lesser-known places because I think that the food is better. But that's just me. I would rather pay $25 for great food than $100 and be shitting fucking blood for a month. All right. You mentioned Matty Guglielmetti as one of your top 3 consiglieres of all time on your last show. Any chance you would consider doing a show on him, or the very least expound on his history and what you saw in him at some point perhaps, but maybe not at this time? I tend to leave Matty alone. There's a lot of reasons for it. I don't shit where I eat. I've said that a million times. But if you wanted a character sketch of Matty, he's highly intelligent, smart guy, good guy, nice guy. But the reality is, in the lifestyle that we so choose to live, these guys, there's pros and cons to everything. But as far as Matty goes, I'm not going to get into specifics, but I think that one of the reasons why I likely did mention him was just because he's a good guy, he's a smart guy, he's a nice guy, very, very intelligent. And to me, intelligence outweighs fucking brute, thuggish sort of behavior every day of the week. And I'd love to see Providence get their shit together. I really would. I've been saying that for a long time. The mere fact that they can't decide on whether Federal Hill is going to be the headquarters or it's going to go back to Boston. I think being in Boston's the wrong fucking thing. They need to move it back to Providence. Obviously Providence has a faction there, but I think that the old days, Providence was the base, it was the stronghold, and the fact that you keep moving it back and forth to Boston, just figure it the fuck out, Providence. All right. Did Joe Kennedy Sr. and Nucky Johnson ever do business together? Absolutely. They had narcotics business together and bootlegging. Now, a lot of people jump my shit when I talk about Joe Kennedy. Listen, the American public wants to put John F. Kennedy on a fucking pedestal, right? So everybody knows that Kennedy was banging Monroe and all the hookers and all this shit. That's fine. We can put that to the side. But the Kennedy family is a fucking crime family. How they got their wealth, Joe Kennedy got his wealth in bootlegging and in drug dealing. He also got his wealth in owning banks and adjusting interest rates for crime people. So anybody that tells you that the Kennedys earned their fucking money legitimately is full of shit. It's not the case. Obviously, Joe Kennedy used the Mafia to help his son get elected. And so that goes all the way back. But yes, they did have business together. All right, here we go. Old Shatgeyser and Anesthesia spoiled your JFK show already. Joey Merlino made his bones on the grassy knoll. Ron Previty proved it. Ange cooked them all pork chop Joey's for the celebration meal. Ron Previty. Joey Merlino. Yeah, I gotta lift my belly to take a shit because it sits on my fucking kneecaps. And it hurts. It hurts. Yeah, Shatweiser, Jesus Christ, Ratweiser and Anesthesia. Yeah, they blame Joey for everything. It's always funny. That's their favorite. It's like, I can't figure it out. It's almost like they have like an orgasm in their pants when they're talking about him. Oh, there's a mob murder going back to 1926. Must have been Joey. Joey. That's all they do. That's all they can do. They're scumbags. Fuck them. I don't give a shit. But that is kind of funny. All right, the worst and best plans in housing for going on the lam. Who had the best or worst plans for going out on the lam? Joe Bonanno, and probably Gas Pipe too. As you know, Joe Bonanno faked his own kidnapping, blamed it on his cousin. Just ridiculous. He didn't hide well. Gas Pipe certainly didn't because he got caught hiding. So, listen, if you're going to hide out, leave the fucking country. Or find some fucking house where you can be insulated far away from where you want it. A lot of guys run to the fucking Poconos. Bad decision. The feds will look for you in the Poconos, they'll look for you in Jersey, but nobody's going to fucking look for you in like fucking Polk, County, Florida. Nobody's going to look for you there. Go there. All right. Or West Virginia. Get wild with it. Get the inbreeding thing going. Go to West Virginia. You can listen to fucking dueling banjos while you fucking lament on killing a motherfucker. All right. If Cosa Nostra had to lose either union control or bookmaking, which do you think they would survive losing, and which one would cripple them more? I think the unions ultimately would hurt them, but probably not the sheer amount of money that fucking bookmaking brings in. Granted, you control a union, you got a lot of money coming in. But I think that they could probably make it without the unions because they still have concrete, construction, drugs, narcotics, shakedowns, whatever the fuck it is. But I think ultimately if they lose bookmaking, they're fucked. It brings in too much goddamn money. And here's the other thing about bookmaking is that a lot of people have been talking about, what's going to fucking happen with all the bookmaking going legal. It's not going to affect the Mafia. And here's why it's not going to affect the Mafia. Because degenerates who can't get a fucking loan from nobody are going to go to the bookmakers. So even if like all the casinos fucking legitimize the bullshit and what have you, you think you're gonna go into fucking the Borgata in Atlantic City or Haraz or the wherever the fuck, and they're gonna give you a loan? They're gonna give you a bet on credit? No fucking way. That's why the mob is always going to make money off of bookmaking. It's never going to change. You can legalize it all day long. They're still going to make money. Bottom line. All right, did Ted Binion, Benny Binion's son, sounds like a fucking poor name. Who are you? Benny Binion. Did Ted Binion, Benny Binion's son, associate with Harvey Blitzstein? Yeah, they absolutely were associates, and I would assume that Blitzstein probably handled a lot of the payments to Binion. As well, Blitzstein was a massive loan shark, so I had heard a couple of years ago that Blitzstein was actually behind the drug trafficking money that Binion got caught for. So there you go. Apparently there's a whole bunch of FBI files on it. I didn't have time to crawl through that, but that's what I have heard. All right. Did you ever watch the documentary JFK and the 8 paid assassins on YouTube? And if Billy Batts did not get whacked, how do you think he would have climbed the ladder of success? I know he was a Gambino guy that was a captain. First of all, no, I have not seen the documentary JFK and 8 paid assassins. Billy Batts really wasn't as big as people make him out to be. I think Goodfellas really distorted the reality of who he was. Was he a captain? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I don't think he would have climbed any ladders. I just think that I think, and it's a good question. I just think that reality has distorted how big he was, just the same way it's distorted how big Tommy DeSimone was. Same sort of theory here. So, we can guess that he probably would have just been a captain forever. Who knows? All right, what's the real reason Carlo Gambino chose Paul over Neil? Or was it a power play to try to put the Gambinos in a more legitimate rackets over street rackets? Pretty simple. They were family. Carlo wanted it to remain in the family. He felt like Paul was the best leader for that. But also at the same time, I don't know if Carlo Gambino ever really trusted Neil Delacroce, especially because he knew that Neil did not like how Carlo became boss. Obviously, Neil Delacroce came up under Anastasia. He was in the administration with Anastasia, and I don't think that Neil liked it. He went along with it, but I don't think he really liked it, and I just think that Carlo wanted to keep it within the family, and he felt like with Paul it was the best suggestion. Turns out to be the absolute wrong decision he made, but that's realistically why he did it. All right, what's left in Chicago? What rackets do they control? Who's in charge? Do they have contact with any of the 5 families? They have contact with Philly, Rhode Island. They got contact with everybody. That's never changed. Chicago's still very active. They have all kinds of the same rackets they've always have. They still have. According to, at least allegedly, Albert Vena is the new boss in Chicago. He's a fucking animal. He's a tough guy, a guy you don't want to fucking cross, but a nice guy too. So that's what's going on in Chicago. But the fact that I think that their numbers are bigger than a lot of people think. Chicago, for a long time, I think, has gone under the FBI radar. And I know, at least I read somewhere, I think online the other day, that they have an organized crime task force that's pretty big now. So obviously they're going to start looking at Chicago again. Obviously with John DeFranco being dead and Albert Vena allegedly taking over, it's going to be interesting. But the same rackets they've always had, same contacts that they've always had. Nothing like that is ever going to completely change. All right. This is an interesting one. What kind of pets do gangsters traditionally have? What do they name them? To my knowledge, dogs, cats, birds. I know a guy who had a monkey, believe it or not, and an alligator. And Joey Gallo had a fucking lion. So, I mean, traditionally they all have pets. I know somebody who's been alleged to be in the Mafia. I don't necessarily know if I believe it, but he has a dog named Valentino, which is a great name for a dog. But yeah, they got birds. I don't know too many guys that have like tons of animals running around, but I don't know. A good name for a dog would be Fungul. We should do that. Fungul the fucking Rottweiler. All right, can you name 5 bosses that preferred negotiation over murder and would only use killing as a last resort? I struggled with this question when I first got it because I can only come up with 4 because everybody else is a fucking psychopath. Angelo Bruno, Carlo Gambino, Frank Costello, and Russell Buffalino. Those are the 4 of 5 that I could possibly think that would prefer to like work it out versus murder. Everybody else I could think of was a fucking psychopath. So it is what it is. All right, any updates on the Lucchese rat as to what the hell was going on inside? I'm not sure which Lucchese rat you're talking about. If you're talking about the guy that was talking about Matty Madonna and all of that kind of stuff, no updates. They're waiting for trial on that one. So as that sort of begins to come out a little bit more, if that's what you're talking about, then I'll definitely cover it. All right. Of these gangsters, who was more feared, Greg Scarpa or Tommy Patera? Both were, but one turned rat, so I got to go with my buddy Tommy Patera. Gaspipe or Sammy the Bull? In my opinion, Gaspipe, because he didn't fucking hesitate. He'd kill everybody. He killed wrong people sometimes. While Sammy the Bull was sort of feared, I think Gaspipe was more of a loose cannon. So, I mean, if I had to take the two coming after me, I'd I'd rather deal with Sammy the Bull than Gaspipe, to be honest with you. All right, if we change the course of time, if that rat fuck Gravano crossed over from the family he was originally associated with, do you think he would have flipped like he did with the Gambinos? Listen, at the end of the day, a rat is not made, a rat is fucking born. That's just sort of how I see it. Weak men do that, and I think given the circumstances, Gravano would have ratted either way. It was in him to do it. I don't think necessarily that Gotti would have been the antithesis of Gravano becoming a rat, but I think, Gravano pointed the finger at everybody, and the end result is Gravano did whatever he wanted, and the mistake that Gotti made was just not fucking killing him to begin with. Gotti does that. I don't think the Gambinos suffer as much as they did. I almost even question whether Gotti would have ended up in prison the way he did. But I think that you're born with a certain gene. You either talk or you don't talk, and Gravano was a rat. He was born a rat. He's always going to be a rat. Nothing he could say is ever going to change that. Bottom line. All right, do they still pass names around to other families before somebody gets made? I would hope to fucking God they stop doing that. It's a pretty dumb thing to fucking do, but, I mean, I get it. Guys got to communicate a certain kind of way, but I would hope that they have evolved at this point more than that. All right, whatever happened to Jackie Nose D'Amico? As far as I know, he's still around, and that's all I'm saying about him. All right, top 5 bosses involved in international business, either legitimate or illegitimate. Legitimate or illegitimate from the past. Frank Cali, Toto Rina, Matteo Denaro, Carmine Galante, and Lucky Luciano. There you go. Obviously, Toto Rina, drugs. Cali, drugs. Matteo Denaro, drugs. Carmine Galante, drugs. Luciano, drugs. Noticing a trend here? All right, do you think there was a shooter in the sewer on that JFK hit? No, but I think there was one on the grassy knoll. I definitely happen to believe that. I never believed the bullshit from the sewer. Just the trajectory just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think there was somebody on the grassy knoll, absolutely. All right, I go on these rat YouTube shows and these motherfuckers and light these motherfuckers up. Michael fucking Francis it's an amazing that an average person with a fucking brain can't see through his bullshit and lies. I know a few fellas in Detroit that hate that fucking guy. I'm a Christian Italian and I hate that fucking guy. Since it's Degenerate Month, were there any suspected homosexual made men? Oh, boy. Yeah, there have been in the past. I know that Rudy Giuliani had a cousin who was made that was a cross-dresser, if that helps. As far as that goes, I don't... there's always been rumors about certain guys. There were rumors about Sammy Gravano, that Sammy Gravano was banging his brother-in-law, and that's really why he killed him. That's always been the rumor on the streets, not one that is formulated off of people that don't like him, but that's been the long end stuff. That's what the streets say. But Rudy Giuliani definitely had a cousin who was a cross-dresser, so he would have fit in good with the parade they had last week here. All right. If Joey Merlino ever gets out of prison, who takes over? First of all, Joey will get out of prison, and that's a good thing. Who takes over? I swear to God, you guys are trying to get me in trouble with these questions. Look, I think realistically, I don't think that Joey would ever give up power on his own volition. I think if Joey was in prison the rest of his life, he's going to continue to run it. I just don't see him not doing that. But if there was somebody, I could pick one of 3. I'm not going to mention their names, obviously, but there's probably 3 guys that I would put at the top of the list, and they know who they are. But I'm just not going to go there with that. All right, let's pretend that you're in a rival family. Your boss gets killed. You can align yourself with one boss, and which alleged mob guys would you want by your side immediately in case war was going to break out? The boss would be Raymond Patriarca. I would not hesitate there. If I had to bring in some guys in with me, Jimmy Burke, Joe Watts, Sonny Mazzone, Phil Narducci, and Georgie Borghese. Those are the guys I would want because I could trust those guys, and I know that if, God forbid, something's going to happen, they're going to shoot, and they're going to do what they got to do to help me, and I'm going to help them, and they're all trustworthy, so there you go. All right, what is the most underrated city in the United States for the Mafia? Hands down, unequivocally, Philadelphia. People don't give Philly credit. at all. They never do. They never have. And in some way, that's a good thing. And I say it's a good thing because it's less heat. It's less being visual. But when I tell you, unequivocally 100%, that there is a place you do not want to go and fuck around in, that's the one place. You don't fuck around there. You treat everybody with respect, and you get respect back. That's how it operates. I've said it before, and I beat it with a hammer. You cannot crack something which its foundation has been laid in fucking Teflon 30 years ago. That's the reality of it. It's underrated. I think that people outside of Philadelphia obviously don't understand Philly whatsoever. They don't understand the makeup of the people. They don't understand the personalities. They don't understand the loyalty, because there's deep-seated loyalty in that city. Philly has a vibe like no other. If you've never been to Philadelphia, you should go. But if you're not from Philly, you might want to be a little careful going into South Philly, because if you don't know what you're doing, it could be a dangerous place. It's a rough place. They don't fuck around. They'd rather crack your head first than to have a kind word. Just know that before you go there. And for Christ's sakes, if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, I want you to go to South Philly and wear that fucking atrocious Cowboys uniform. And I say that because I'm an Eagles fan. And I've seen what happens to Cowboys fans at the Link. Okay, I've been there plenty of times. I used to go to 6, 7, 8 games a season in Philly. So please, if you're a Dallas fan, do us all a favor and go into South Philly, scream the Cowboys are number one. Because what's going to happen to you is going to be pretty fucking epic. And deservedly so. Stay your ass in the fucking hot weather on the border with Mexico, wherever the fuck. Don't come into South Philly. Straight up. But yeah, they are the most underrated city for organized crime, I think, in the United States. Definitely. All right, do you have any stories of mob guys who are natural pranksters? This one's going to get me in trouble, too. Okay, yeah. I may or may not know somebody in Philly who enjoyed tossing darts at somebody. This guy might have enjoyed drawing beards and mustaches and eyebrows on people's faces with permanent markers. He might have enjoyed lighting them on fire a little bit to have some fun. He might have even made a guy wear a tiara for his birthday. So, yeah, maybe I know some wild shit. The person I'm talking about is going to know, and he's going to wonder how I got this information, but it's fucking epic and hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing when I heard this shit. Who lets somebody throw darts at them for fun? For Christ's sakes. I can only picture these guys throwing darts and planting them in somebody's back of their head, the back of his ass, whatever the case may be. Permanent markers is a little high school, a little junior. So if this person is listening to this, what I want you to do is stop using permanent marker. Draw dicks on his face or something. Like mustaches and eyebrows are great, but you gotta up your game. You gotta up your game to dicks. Dicks are funny on faces like that. And lighting them on fire, what's not to have fun? What you ought to do is make him hold a bottle rocket in his ass. That's a fun thing to do. So there you go. So to my friend who may be listening to this, I'm telling you, use a bottle rocket, make him hold it in his butt cheeks and light the motherfucker. I'm telling you, because if it explodes early, you're going to get a lot of fun. Christ, I'm a degenerate. All right. Did any of the families have connections or business interests in the rap game? Specifically, Biggie Smalls on his second album talked a lot about Matty Madonna, the Commission, and also Cash Money. Look, it's long been rumored. There's FBI files, but nobody's really ever had access to them. But a lot of it's just subject to interpretation. Did Biggie Smalls knock around with mob guys? Hello, goodbye. Probably to that extent. Other than hello, goodbye, I seriously doubt that he had any relationships with anybody. I mean, growing up in Bed-Stuy, I'm sure he knew somebody, but I think it's pretty much left it at knowing someone versus really having any sort of criminal contact with them. To be honest with you, I don't know who the fuck Cash Money is. So, but I think a lot of guys, specifically from the 90s, were looking for more street credit than otherwise than being like a Blood, a Crip, or whatever the fuck the case may be, or a Latin King. They're looking for street credit. So why not hang out with a mob guy that gives you that street credit? But I just find it hard to believe that anybody in the mob really would honestly give them the time of day other than a hello and goodbye. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. All right, do you consider the outfit to be Cosa Nostra, past and present, or do they kind of do their own thing? In the Al Capone era, they were not really Cosa Nostra. They were more street gangsters, street hustlers, street thugs, more than the Mafia. They didn't really even induct during the Capone era, but after him, they did. And they really became traditional Cosa Nostra after Capone left the scene. Was Joey Testa ever made? No. Said that earlier. That's another one. How did Felix Aldericio get the nickname Milwaukee Phil? Believe it or not, he got the nickname when he moved to Milwaukee as a teenager, and he became a boxer under the name of Milwaukee Phil. So there you go. I did not know that. I learned that today. So there you go. I learned something from these questions as well. Does the Chicago Mafia operate the same way as New York as far as the hierarchy goes? Boss, underboss, consigliere, captain, soldato, etc., etc. Yes, 100% they operate in the same exact fashion. There's a leadership chart, and they work in the same manner. All right, in a recent interview, and I'm sure you saw it, the interviewer asked an ex-mobster in the Chicago outfit if they sent money, or I guess he asked... Oh, okay. Let me rephrase this. Okay, in a recent interview, I'm sure you've seen it, the interviewer asked an ex-mobster of the Chicago outfit, Christ, I hope it's not Frank Culata. Ugh. But he asked, I guess, this guy if they sent money back to Italy as the five families do. Believe it or not, the five families don't send money back to Italy. Back in the day, they did when it was for narcotics and stuff like that. Obviously, they sent money to Luciano. I know people have sent money to Totorino when he was in charge, Denaro with him being in charge. But the reality is that American bosses aren't going to send money back to Italy. Italy has no power over the United States. Two different factions, two different things going on. And could you really see Carlo Gambino being told to send money back to Italy to see how that would go? Better yet, let's use Nicky Scarfo, because that's even funnier to me. So Nick, we're going to need $25,000 sent to Italy. Nick killed a fucking horse. You think he's going to put up with giving $25,000 to a zip over in Italy? Not going to fucking happen. When you kill a horse, you're on a whole nother fucking level of nuts. I mean, a whole nother level of nuts. Jeff, with today's surveillance techniques where they can spot a wise guy scratching his ass from a drone that's 1,000 feet up, or listening devices that could pick up a fart in a crowded bar, bearing all that in mind, Gambino and Gigante were extremely careful in their dealings. Do you think they would have avoided serious scrutiny in today's world? Absolutely, and let me tell you why. You have to learn to adapt, right? A lot of guys have adapted. Look at Frank Cali, for an example. He was able to adapt. Nobody ever saw him. Nobody ever got his photo. He was low-key. I know guys who absolutely refuse to get a cell phone. They'll buy a burner from Walmart that can't be connected to them, but they won't buy a fucking cell phone with any sort of fucking name or connection to them. A lot of guys still use flip phones. I've seen that all over the place. Guys refuse to meet in public these days. So I think it's just a matter of being alert to what's going on around you. Not using email. Boy, could you imagine if the five families were all associating through fucking Gmail? Be Gambino Crime Family 1 emailing Genovese Crime Family 2. Could you just imagine what those fucking emails would look like? But no, I think for the most part, I think Gigante and Gambino would have succeeded. Just like they did back then, it would have been a little more difficult, but you always got to adapt to your surroundings. And that's, look, they had the chin fucking on surveillance for like 20 years, 24/7. He still got away with it for 30 fucking years. It's obviously harder these days, but it can still be done. But no phones. Stop with the fucking phones. It's goddamn worst invention for the mafia ever in existence. You send a text, it's coming back. There's a database. And listen, for all the criminals that are out there, let me tell you something. I'm going to be very blunt. You got to understand, if you own a fucking iPhone, those things are going to sit there. Those text messages, you think you delete them, you think you wipe your phone, you can't. It has like a 90-day curvature. So what you got to do, use a goddamn burner phone. Use a burner phone. Seriously. Or put the phone in somebody else's name. Because believe me, they got to use different kinds of warrants to get your phone records from a friend who's got a phone in his name for you. So there you go. Pick good friends that are willing to tell the company to go fuck themselves. Simple as that. Stop using the phones, guys. All right. Well, was Frank Cali death a hit? Obviously, it was a hit. Was the Cali death a hit with Camelo being used as a whack job shooter? Is it possible the enemy knew of the issues with Camelo and Cali's niece? I don't think so. I think that listen, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. QAnon, which, whatever. continuously keeps throwing out shit that this was a conspiracy to the government and FBI agents taught him how to shoot. I don't believe any of that fucking nonsense. This kid was fucking nuts. He did something stupid, and believe me, the time clock on his survivability is coming to a close. That kid's never going to make it 6 months in fucking prison. He's going to get gutted like a fucking fish in prison, and he deserves it, and he should get it. As a matter of fact, sooner than possible, please. All right. How strong is organized crime in upstate Buffalo? I've read and researched a lot, but what's the latest? Are they making a comeback, and what's going on in Ontario? The truth is Buffalo is actually run by someone who resides in Canada. It was all over the news. Just look up mob boss Canada Buffalo crime family. You'll see that there were wiretaps. He got caught talking about it. But I don't want to go into a whole lot of it because I may know the guy. So, but as far as what I understand, the guy that was running Buffalo is actually from Hamilton. As far as what's going on in Ontario, it's a fucking mess. You've got the Rizzutos fighting Andromeda, Camorra, the bikers, whatever's left of the Catroni crime family. It's a fucking mess over there. All right, did Frank Ballesteri order the bomb on Frank Lefty Rosenthal? That's been a subject of a lot of talk. I mean, I personally, I'm on the fence with this. I'm 50-50. Let me explain why. I think ultimately it may have been signed off by Ballesteri, but I think ultimately it was Tony Spilotro who did it. But what we do know is that Ballesteri was known in circles as the Mad Bomber, so that would directly relate to him. But I also think that because he's known as the Mad Bomber and he knows the FBI knows that about him, I don't think he's going to put himself out that far like that. And I think that if Spilotro did it, it would make more sense. You do the bomb, it goes back to Ballesteri. Maybe Spilotro gets away with it. And I think Spilotro had more to gain by killing Rosenthal, really, than Ballesteri did. Because Rosenthal wasn't snitching on anybody. Rosenthal was doing some things they didn't like, granted. But he wasn't snitching. He wasn't telling on everybody. Spilotro, like I said, had more to gain by doing that. Because the mob was making a ton of money with Frank Lefty Rosenthal. Even if he was out of the Vegas casinos at that point, he still made them a ton of money, and he was less reckless than Tony Spilotro was. But I just think it would have been too obvious for Ballesteri to do it. But to back up the Ballesteri side of things, he was caught on wiretaps complaining about Rosenthal. He blamed him for all the legality issues that the mob had and mob-controlled casinos. He also was caught on a wiretap basically telling his sons essentially that he was going to kill Rosenthal. So we can balance this either way, but I think Spilotro had more to gain by shutting up Lefty Rosenthal really than Ballesteri did. That's just my opinion. All right, if Tony Spilotro killed both Mad Sam DiStefano and Sam Giancana, would that make him the most high-profile killer in La Cosa Nostra history? Absolutely, unequivocally, 100%. But you can make an argument for Frank Sheeran if he absolutely 100% certifiably killed Jimmy Hoffa. That would elevate him, well above his pay grade. But yeah, I also think you can add Johnny Roselli to that list. I think you can add Carlos Marcello to that list. Kennedy, Trafficante, Kennedy, Buffalino, Kennedy. So I think if we could prove that Trafficante, Marcello, Buffalino were behind Kennedy, that automatically puts them ahead, obviously, of Tony Spilotro. But for the time being, I think Tony Spilotro definitely owns that record. All right. I've heard you say some negative things about some of the guys who they interview for a lot of these mob documentaries, but I haven't heard you say much about Frank Cullotta and Dominic Montiglio. What's your take on these two? I don't bash Frank Cullotta, and there's a reason. I don't really think I have to. Because he's probably the worst one at telling the truth that I've ever seen of all of them. He is a joke. It's laughable. And I really am not going to waste time on a guy who just, the minute he opens his mouth, it's nonsense. But also what Frank doesn't do that some of these other guys does is he doesn't talk about himself nonstop. He talks about other guys. The majority of the rest of them all talk about themselves. They overinflate everything. Frank is bad at overinflating his story too, so don't get it twisted. But I just don't think much of Frank Cullotta anyway. I just don't think much of him, so I don't waste my time. Now, as far as Dominic Montiglio, I don't go at him for a lot of different reasons. One, I don't give a fuck. Two, His story is a little bit different than everybody else's. I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, fucking not saying he's a rat, not holding him accountable like I do everybody else, because he is. He was a rat and a piece of shit, but his story is a little different. He really didn't have a choice. I mean, ultimately, he made the choice to do what he did anyway. But the guy was in Vietnam. He came back. He was sort of controlled by everybody. Yes, I agree. He could have made his own decisions to do what he wanted. But he just doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's completely full of shit. I think there is a lot of truth in what he said. Doesn't make it right that he's a rat. But the guy doesn't go out. He's not public. You don't see him on every fucking mob documentary talking about how tough he was. You don't see all these books with him. You don't see any of this shit. He fucking ratted. He knows he's a rat. He's admitted he's a rat. And he stays the fuck out of the public. That's what these guys should do, but that's what they don't do. So it's not that I don't have a disdain for either one, because I have a disdain for both of them. I just, some guys just are more amplified than others, like that piece of shit, Michael Francis. All right, was Frank Calabrese involved in the Tony Spilotro hit? Probably the planning of it, but I don't think he took part in the murder itself, to be honest with you. I just really don't. Obviously, there were 4 different guys charged with that murder, but I don't think he took part in it, but I do think he helped in the planning of it. When is the Cali murder trial? I could not tell you. That's all being kind of kept under wraps right now just because it's high profile. There's not really any news coming out whatsoever about it, other than the fact that this piece of shit Comella pled not guilty. I don't know how you plead not guilty to being caught on a fucking tape shooting somebody, but whatever the fuck, what do I know? All right, any publicly known guys you could see becoming big powerhouses in New York City? A couple, but I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, let's say Luciano never existed. Would the commission have been established when it was? And would present day be different had it not happened when it did? Well, the truth is the commission, sort of the idea of it, was already in place by Joe Masseria. Luciano just kind of took it, tweaked it, and moved it around a little bit more. But the idea was already there to begin with. So he's not the inventor of the commission per se, but the way that he changed it and the way he honed it, he is the inventor of. So it was already in place, but if Luciano didn't exist, would it have become what it would have become? I think it's a natural progression. It probably would have, but probably not to the same extent. Not to the same extent. All right. Is it true that Venaro Mangano said, "Shoot me, I'm still not going to say nothing," when he was asked to testify against Vincent the Chin? Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's not the first. If we look back at when Frank Costello got shot by Vinny the Chin Gigante, Costello recognized him when he got shot. They get to the fucking end of the court thing, and the jury's asking Costello to identify his shooter. He knows it's fucking Vinny the Chin. He says, "No, it's not him." And as Gigante's walking out, getting acquitted of everything, he looks over and goes, "Thanks, Frank." And that was it. So, there are some guys that throughout history have been able to keep their fucking mouth shut, and that's a good thing. God bless them. All right. In August, it'll be 50 years since Woodstock. Did the Mafia run any rackets in regards to Woodstock? Yeah, they had a huge part in the garbage hauling, believe it or not, picking up after the bullshit. Drinks and beverages, those unions kind of got all a kickback from it. But on a side note, Jimi Hendrix was actually kidnapped by the Mafia and held upstate New York over a record label dispute. And the Mafia got involved in that. So you can look up that research for yourself. But as far as like some of the unions they used, absolutely 100% they got a kickback. All right. Who and what families are trying to rub out the Musitano family here in Canada? Andrangeta, the Catroni, the Camorra, the bikers, everybody. That's just the way it is. It's become the wild, wild fucking West, like 1980s fucking New York City. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I really don't. And I think the Musitano family is pretty much done. Everybody's been killed for the most part. What you're really going to see is the war between what's left over to Rizzuto's, Andrangeta, Catronis, Camorra, and etc. All right. Any Chicago news? Anything on Albert Vena? He's one not to be trifled with. According to sources, he's the new boss, and you're 100% right. He's not a guy you want to piss off, not a guy you want to fuck with, but he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. So that's what's going on there. If RICO charges existed in the 40s and 50s, do you think more guys would have turned out like rats like they do now? No, I don't think so, because I think, let me tell you why. Because in the 40s and 50s, they shot motherfuckers. They killed motherfuckers. Just for lying, you got whacked. For cheating, you got whacked. For not coming in when you were told to, you got whacked. different time period. Today they don't do that. So because there wasn't a moratorium on murder. So I think in the 40s and 50s you could control witnesses by fear. You know how Abe Rellis got thrown out of a fucking building, for Christ's sakes. You know, couldn't fucking fly. What was it? The rat could talk, but he couldn't fly, or something like that they said. But no, because they still used murder and mayhem to get to you in those days. They'd whack you in a heartbeat. The fact that today's time period, you know, they don't do that so much, that it's different. When you control by fear, and they know and if somebody knows you'll kill them, they're going to be a lot less hesitant to fuck with you, a lot less hesitant to talk, a lot less hesitant to not do what you ask them to do. And even if the Rico was in the 40s and 50s, they'd still be killing motherfuckers. All right. What's your favorite mob movies? Obviously, Goodfellas is one of my top ones, even though it's the beginning to the end is riddled with a lot of bullshit and nonsense. I like The Godfather 1 and 2, but obviously that's more operatic and fantasy. Casino was great, but the one I cannot stand is A Bronx Tale. I hate that fucking movie. I hate Chaz Palminteri. I hate everything that movie stands for. That little shit Lalo Brancato can go fuck himself. Little scumbag junkie fuck. Can't stand him either. I don't give a fuck if he did his time in prison. He killed a fucking cop because he was a junkie. I have no respect for that kid. There are other actors that were in that film that I liked. But I didn't like the film. I just have my own issues with that film, and we're going to leave it there. All right, I watched Bad Blood recently. Is it true to life, Jeff? What are the realities and where is the fiction for entertainment purposes? The whole fucking thing is entertainment. I tried to sit down, and I can't fairly and objectively say this. I tried to watch it. Everybody was talking about it. I sat down and watched about 7 minutes of it and couldn't take it. First of all, Anthony LaPaglia is a fucking horrible actor. The fact that they tried to allude that fucking Vito Rizzuto got poisoned, bullshit from beginning to end. I didn't buy any of it. Listen, is it well made? Sure, absolutely. Are the storylines good? Not really. What it is it's a ripoff of something that they're trying. And listen, I'm not trying to judge anybody. Hello, I'm doing a mob genre TV show myself, so I really shouldn't talk so much shit, to be honest with you. But you know what? If you're gonna cover it like a gangster film. This to me, just from a couple of things that I saw, it looked like a fucking really cheap version of like Sons of Anarchy meets Goodfellas. And I was just like, I just think they took a lot of liberties with a lot of facts. But you know what? That's what it is. Hollywood has a tendency to bastardize the mafia. They have a tendency to make it Hollywood garbage. But the reality is things like Goodfellas, even though there were things in it that were bullshit, it was filmed the right way. They showed the violence of the streets. Even a film like Mean Streets, which I happen to like, even Once Upon a Time in America, I liked. You just have to shoot it a certain way. It's got to be real. When you try to you cannot make. And I love Kim Coates, don't get me wrong, but I can never see that guy playing a gangster. First of all, the minute that I saw him in Sons of Anarchy, that was a great role for him. But I can't buy him as a mafia anything. I just can't. It's just my opinion. But I tried watching it. I really did. But just a joke. I just couldn't stand it. There's a lot of them. All right. How much influence did the mob have in Hollywood? They really had a ton. Really, they controlled the unions, which was huge. Benny Siegel was really kind of the first to do it. Then Russell Bufalino did it, obviously. But Mickey Cohen really took his directive. Mickey Cohen ran that fucking town like a crap table. He didn't fuck around. That's the guy you didn't want to piss off. But they controlled Hollywood for a long time in the golden era of Hollywood, not so much today. And that's that. All right, back to the future question. If Appalachian never happened, Valachi didn't rat, Cosa Nostra was still underground, and Omerta was in effect, where would the mob be today? Same exact fucking place it is now. J. Edgar Hoover, who I like to call J. Edgar Cougar, cross-dressing prick that he was, little weirdo. And everybody knows the mob had photos with him wearing like women's undergarments and banging men and shit like that, and that's what they held over his head for a long time. It wouldn't have mattered. They knew the mafia was there. They just really couldn't prove it. They couldn't really put validity on it, but the government knew they were there. The government turned the other way for a long time. It doesn't matter what Valachi did. Ultimately, somebody would end up saying something, and they would be found out anyway. So whether it was Valachi or whether it was Gravano or anybody in between, I think it would have happened either way. I don't think much would have changed. All right, if Lucky Luciano never got deported, do you think Vito Genovese would still have taken over? Absolutely 100%. Vito Genovese was not going to sit back and take any shit. He did his time in prison, came back to the country. He wanted to be elevated like he was before. They weren't willing to do it, so he says, all right, I'm going to take it to your ass. And that's exactly what he did. Now, we can argue that Genovese was a fucking lunatic and was out of line. Sure, but he was straight gangster. He did the gangster fucking thing. But I don't think Lucky getting deported would have had any fucking thing to do. Listen, Lucky tried to hold on to the mob, which is why he reinstalled the boss of bosses at the Havana convention. He said, we're going to put back the bosses of bosses. And it was a last-ditch effort in him to control the Mafia. It was a last-ditch effort to keep Genovese on the fucking sidelines. And it didn't work because essentially Lucky Luciano ends up getting shelved and Genovese does what he does anyway. That's the bottom line. So I don't think him not getting deported would have changed it. I think Genovese really had one mode, and he needed subterfuge, and he needed people to join in, and Carlo Gambino did, and the rest is sort of fucking history. All right, do you think the Philadelphia guys have any control over the unions in Atlantic City anymore, like they did with Nicky Scarfa with his boss? I don't think so. I could be wrong about that. I don't know enough about that. I know people and things and places. I just don't think so. I think Nicky had more control in the unions than they do now, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that the Atlantic City boom with the casinos and everything, controlling the beverage union, the waitress union, whatever the fuck it may be, the concrete unions, different time period, different things going on. So I don't think so. I really don't, but I could be wrong about that. All right. Is there active mob presence in Connecticut? Yes, they're all Genoveses. All right. What are some Mafia bloopers and funny stories? And read your hate mail, please. Okay, I will get to some of that here in a second. Let me get to this other one. Would be cool to hear you talk about the differences between the American and Sicilian Cosa Nostra and 'Ndrangheta and the Camorra. Not much difference between 'Ndrangheta and Camorra, to be honest with you. They're all the same. They're all the same function. If you go back a couple of shows ago, and I know who asked me, it was Nico Corrales asked me this. If you go back a couple of shows ago, and I'll find it out for you and I'll send you a message, but I talked about really some of the big differences between the two. Sicilians kill politicians, judges, cops. The Americans don't do that. That's the major difference. But 'Ndrangheta and Camorra, same design, same sort of system. But I will find that show and I'll send it over to you. That way you can get a more direct answer. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here for the next 40 years. All right. Would Cosa Nostra win a war against the Hells Angels? I mean, the Hells Angels are all over the place around the world. You know what? I don't think it would ever happen. If it did, Hells Angels are some sick fucks. Probably would. Hells Angels would probably win that war. And I think a lot of that has to do with just sheer numbers and sheer brutality. Hells Angels have no problem blowing up buildings and shit. So, who knows? Let's hope to God that never happens. All right. Let's see where we are. Okay. Did that one. Let's see. All right. I think I have gotten through all of them, but I'm just checking really quick. I apologize to everybody listening. I think I've gone through just about all of them. Okay, there was two more things I wanted to do here. All right, so one of the questions asked was any mob stories or whatever. I could tell a pretty interesting story, and I call it a blooper. Everybody else is going to say I'm a sick, demented fuck. But the reality is this. I knew a guy who was... I'm trying to figure out how to say this. So anyway, this was in the early days when the internet, you could join a porn site and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if you know who owned those porn sites, but it was the mob. And what happened was a friend of mine apparently joined some porn site, and apparently they wanted to, in these days you didn't use credit cards online, you sent a money order. Apparently my friend thought he was slick and wasn't going to send the money order, so the people that were behind the front company were a little pissed, and they ended up sending him some threatening emails. Now, I knew people in those days just like I've known my whole entire life, and he came to me for help. And he says, I don't know, this is coming out of Florida. I'm scared shitless. And I thought, okay, this will be pretty funny. I'm going to fuck with them and teach them a lesson. And so we were typically going to this Italian restaurant. The guy that owned the place was a Sicilian gangster, very nice guy, but he was a serious guy. And my friend was a little intimidated by him, and I get it. So we ended up going to a hockey game or something like that. But prior to going to the hockey game, we thought we would fuck with him. So we put a tarp in the trunk, we put a gun in the trunk, and we just figured we would fuck with him. So the whole night, I brought this guy I called Dracula with me. He was a tough guy. And he doesn't say anything to my other friend who's like trying to have a conversation with us, but we're not saying nothing. We're just acting cold all night to him, and he's getting a little sketched out by it. And he looks over at my friend Dracula. Goes, Jesus, Dracula, look, you're gonna kill some fucking buddy. And he starts cracking up because I'm in on the plot. My friend's in on the plot. My other friend has no fucking idea what's going on. So the whole way home, we're on the interstate. We're supposed to get off a certain exit, and we don't. All of a sudden, my buddy in the back seat starts to get a little fucking worried. We're not going home. He's getting strange. We turn up the volume on the car. We can't hear him. He can't hear us. We end up getting off at this place, and there was a church that had like an alleyway, but it was a covered alleyway. And so we pull in. My friend's freaking out. He has no idea what's going on. So me and Dracula get out the fucking car. We go around to the trunk. I lift the trunk. I start laying the tarp out with a fucking hacksaw, and I pull out a Chrome 45. And my friend in the car, I hear click. He's starting to lock the fucking doors. He's so fucking terrified. He thought we were going to kill him. So anyway, we're laughing hysterically, standing at the back of the fucking car. Next thing you know, we hear this car door open, and we hear feet running on the fucking pavement. My friend is just taking off because he fears for his life. And it was one big fucking joke. We were just busting his balls. But I realized immediately that where we were about 5 blocks to a friend of mine's house. And I say, fuck, he's going to run and tell them they're going to call the police. We got a big fucking problem. So we load up everything, throw the gun in the back of the trunk, all this shit. And we pull out the back way, keep the lights off because now we're fucking paranoid. The cops are coming. And we make a left-hand turn onto this road, and up way ahead, my buddy Dracula goes, there's that fat fuck. Look at him run. Because this guy couldn't run. He was overweight. He chain smoked, but he's fucking running. He's running like his asshole is on fire. And so I'm like, well, what do we do? He goes, I don't know. If you roll down a window, he's not going to listen to us. He's going to dart to the right. Then we're fucked. I said, well, what do we do? He goes, run him over. I said, run him over? He goes, yeah, clip him with the outside of your car. He'll go fly, and we'll pick him up, throw him in the car. Everything will be great. So what do? I run him over with the fucking car. I got up to about 40 miles an hour, put the right side of the car, clipped him on his left side, near his ass cheek, and I thought he would just like fall like, a little. This motherfucker did a 360. Boom! He goes flying in the air, and I'm like, uh-oh, now we got a bigger problem, because if he's hurt, now we're really fucked. But we didn't want to go to jail. So we hit him, he goes flying. And he lands in like a fucking mud puddle. He's got fucking dirt in his mouth, fucking mud on his eyes. And my buddy Dracula picks him up and throws him in the car. And he starts screaming, don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me. And we just start laughing. We're like, dude, we're just fucking with you. Oh, did you have to hit me with a fucking car to prove it? The fuck is wrong with you guys? And he never got in the car with me again after that. So, I mean, it's a little fucked up. But, I mean, it's just shit you do when you're young. And, but I tell you what, he never ever fucked with those porn sites again. All right, so the last thing we're going to do today is I said I wanted to play the mob nickname game. A lot of people like to come up with funny mob nicknames. I thought they were going to be a little fucking more grotesque than they were, so I'm really disappointed in some of you that participated, but I'm going to read a few. Joey Bag of Donuts, Carmine Caskets, Patrick the Basement Furnace, Potatoes O'Brien, Sally Buttcheeks, Billy No Brains, Big Nose Malacca, Gary the Groundskeeper. I like that one. Pinky Toes. Christopher. Vice Grips Vinny. Kenny King Can. Philadelphia Phil. Pittsburgh Pete. Sal the Socks. The Cyclops. John the Fister. The Fister. What the I know somebody named John. Oh, Jesus. John the Fister. Dildo Hands Don. These are getting progressively more disgusting. Mickey Tampons. You see the direction this is going. Some of you got where I was going with this. John the Fister, Dildo Hands Don. What is so? If somebody's called Dildo Hands Don, what the fuck is he doing with his hands? Mickey tampons? Like seriously? Johnny Cheese Grater, Nicky Potato Salad, and Jimmy the Woman. I know a guy in Philadelphia they called Jimmy the Woman. All right, so we got a little hate mail too, and everybody's a big fan of my hate mail, so I'm just trying to find it. You got to give me a second. It's not very long. Okay, these are all things that have been. Oh, excuse me. There was one more question, Nick. Oh wow, there's a couple questions I missed. All right, so let me answer 3 questions really quick. Do you think Paul Castellano would have been a better consigliere in the Gambino family versus a boss? Absolutely 100%. Neil Delacroce had to have a lot of swagger to be in Albert Anastasia's administration and smoothly transition into the administration of the Gambinos without a demotion or death. Must have been the purest form of Cosa Nostra gangster to ever join the Mafia. 100%, I agree with you. Gas Pipe Casso versus Nicky Scarfo. I'm going to take Nicky Scarfo every day. All right, so we get a lot of fucking emails. I mean, a lot of nasty grams. Sometimes I get good ones. Sometimes I get bad ones. Sometimes it's just threats. I get them all the time. But these are the 5 that I got in the last week that are absolutely the most hilarious fucking hate mail I've ever gotten. I like to keep, sometimes people are like, listen, if you're going to send me hate mail, be fucking original already. Don't be like, if I ever see you, I'm going to chop your fucking head off with a fork. Be fucking a little bit out of the box. Bring it. If you're going to bring it, bring it. Don't hesitate. And these 5, in my personal opinion, if I could give out trophies or T-shirts for the best fucking hate mail, these 5s would get like golden fucking stars. All right, the first one. You don't know anybody, and I should read their names, but I'm not going to. But most of these people use fake accounts. All right, you don't know anybody in Philadelphia. In fact, you post that you're there, but you're never there. I know. I look. You're a shrimp dick demon. I'm in Philly all the time. I post I'm in Philly all the time. If you had any fucking balls, maybe you'd show up where the fuck I go. But I know you're not going to show up where I go because if you're not known in the places that I go, guess what happens to you? Slock City, motherfucker. All right. I wonder who's dumber, you or Jesus? Well, we know who's going to hell tonight, don't we? Oh, boy. If I had a chance to meet you, I would take out a pen and stab you repeatedly while you had orgasms thinking about your boyfriend, Joey Merlino. I wonder, did Ron Previty send this from hell? Because that's something he would say. Wow, so you're going to stab me with a pen, and you're going to just stab me repeatedly while I come into my pants thinking about Joey Merlino. That's fucking great. Great. All right. You talk all kinds of shit about Ron Previty, but I bet you wouldn't say that to his face. You talk a lot of shit, and from what I hear, you got no friends in Philly, so you might want to start wearing a bulletproof vest down there. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, I would say that to his face. I think I've made it on record that I have no problem saying whatever I say to people in person. Ask anybody that's met me in person that was a little bit shocked by me saying, what the fuck's your problem? I don't hesitate. I don't play around. Hey, if I don't have any friends in Philly, then that's okay. You know what I mean? But I know I do, and they know I do, and that's really all that matters. So maybe you should stop, like, clocking me like a fucking rabbit with a carrot stuck up his ass instead of his mouth and just leave me the fuck alone. Bulletproof vest. Get the fuck out of here. Really? All right. And you know what? Besides, why wear a bulletproof vest? I could just wear a strap on. That way, when I see you, I could teach you what it's like to be fucked like a man. Maybe that'll help you. Fuck out of here. Oh, but yeah, by the way, how's your mom? How's your sister? Yeah, that's right. I have both of them. All right, last one. Sammy Gravano doesn't like you. Okay, I'm going to cry at this one. This is really hurting me now. Sammy Gravano don't like you. Does that scare you? Yeah. Why would it scare me? He looks like a fucking lizard. What's he going to do with his... He's like a lizard with Nazi tattoos all over his body. What's he going to do? Cough on me and give me the fucking plague? Please. Sammy Gravano is good at one thing, and that's being fucking irrelevant. You hear me? You understand me? So... those 5 people, you get the 5 Golden Fist Awards. See, here I go. I'm thinking about John the Fister again. You two, you all 5 of you get the fucking Golden Star Awards. Congratulations. You're more degenerate than I am. I always think it's funny when these people always bring up, I'm not here, I'm not there. Hello, I put this shit on fucking Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm not hard to fucking find. I go to the same 3 or 4 places. So if you play the odds, chances are you find me. But you're not going to because you're not a man. You're a bitch. You're a bitch. So call me next time your mom and your sister need babysitting. All right. All that being said, that's going to be the show for this week. We will be back next week with an all-new topic, probably the JFK thing, like I said. Check in on Tuesday. We're going to post everything about the new Q&As. And if I didn't get to your question, I apologize, but there were like 80 of them, and it's hard to get through all of them. But check us out on Twitter at RealMobTalk7. Check out fucking Margate, Saltwater Margate, New Jersey. It's a great fucking restaurant. It's in Margate. You're going to hear a commercial for it during the show. Please check that out. Please, if you're in Philadelphia, visit Chick's Philly, owned by Philip Narducci and Gina Narducci. I love them to death. They have a great place. And also check out Kitchen Consigliere, Angelo Lutz's restaurant, if you're in Collingswood, New Jersey. All that being said, we will be back next week. Once again, on Facebook, type in The Flannagans TV Show or The Flannagans. You can also go to Instagram, Mob Talk Radio, on Twitter, at RealMobTalk7. Also, you can donate to the channel. We are trying to keep the show free. There is a donut. Jesus fucking me, donut. You can go to the YouTube page and click the About button, and under that, it has a link to the donation. You can donate $1, $2, $3, whatever the fuck you want. I'm not going to put a gun to your head. Maybe a dildo, but not a gun. But all that being said, thanks for listening in. We'll be back next week, and just check out the Flannagans over on Facebook.